Good evening, freaks and friends, and welcome to Math Bites. I'm your host, Math Machine, and once again, I find myself in a situation where I'm lacking pretty much any kind of reasonable news. I think in large part that has to do with the fact that Captain America the Winter Soldier came out technically today, but really yesterday because movie theaters are weird with the whole, we don't release movies on Thursday except for the midnight release. Oh wait, 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, but we don't release them on Thursday. By the way, little side note, if you haven't seen Captain America the Winter Soldier yet, stop watching this and go see it. I wholly recommend it. And if you're watching this several months in the future when Captain America the Winter Soldier is on Blu-ray, A, what the fuck are you doing watching this video several months down the line? And B, go buy it on Blu-ray and watch it. Back to my point at hand, I'm in a bit of a situation where I'm kind of lacking news, and I try to keep my rants to the weekend. But there is this one bit of news that I saw that it's kind of interesting and kind of weird at the same time. A documentary of sorts is being made, specifically about the early age of gaming. And the person who is filming this is going to, I think, end it or have this big finale kind of thing in it, or just he said that this is how he wants to finish the documentary, and ironically it's the first thing they're doing. He's going on an excavation to try and find the lost ET cartridges that were rumored to have been buried somewhere in the New Mexico desert. Now, if you're a gamer, you know exactly what this is and just how ridiculous an idea that is. But if you aren't, allow me to illuminate the situation. Back in the early, well, I think late 70s, early 80s, either way, there was a company called Atari. You probably heard of them because they've been rebuilt from the ground up several times over, but it's never been the official Atari. It's just been a company with the name Atari. Atari is basically known for being the first big company with a video game console, the Atari 2600. I say first big company because they actually didn't make the first video game console. But, and their big game was, Pong. If you've never heard of that, what kind of gamer are you? Everyone knows Pong. Pong is that little, yep, there we go. Boop. Boop. I can't do it on webcam because it's too disorienting, but it's that game where you control, it's basically the tennis thing. It's one of the earliest games. In some weird way, in a few instances I've seen, there were versions of it from back in the 50s. But the one that Atari made was, I think, 79, which was one of the earliest video game machine games. Not like arcade machines, but a home device machine. And they were a really big company. Back in the 80s, they were huge. They were, I think, the biggest video game company at that point. And their console was the biggest one, the one that sold like gangbusters. And what happened was this was at a point where you could make video games, I don't say easily, but you could make them quicker and it wouldn't be as much of an issue as if you did it now. These days, in order to make any kind of decent video game, for a console takes a year or two at least. Back then, you could do it in 6 months, a little quicker if you had a bigger team. E.T., the video game, was being made for, well, of course, E.T. the movie. And what happened was they only had 6 weeks to make it. Even by the standards of the Atari days, that was stupidly fast. And they knew they couldn't, well, the guys that were actually making it knew that they couldn't get it done in that kind of time. But Atari itself was like, you get that out there because we are going to sell this shit like hotcakes. And they were so confident that they were going to sell that game in huge waves. They actually made more of the E.T. video game than there were Atari 2600 consoles. Stop and think about that for a second. They made more of a game than they had of the console in which to play said game. If any company did that today, you would think that they were batshit crazy. But no, they did that under the assumption that they would sell a ton of consoles. They basically doubled their number of sold consoles from this one game alone. And initially they were right. The game, when it first came out, sold like crazy. The problem came about a week later, when in massive numbers people started demanding their money back because this game was one of the biggest pieces of shit ever made. It was the first mega bomb of a game. And it crippled Atari. I think at that point Atari just never really fully recovered. I think that there was something in the ballpark of like 10 million copies of this made, or some outrageous number like that. And it went from 40. It was initially sold for $40. In the time span of about a month, it was sold for, I think, 50 cents. Tell you how popular this game was. So there was a rumor that got started shortly thereafter that in order to dispose of these cartridges, they buried them somewhere in the New Mexico desert. This has never really been confirmed, but it's been a very long-standing belief because there were a ton of these cartridges made, and you can still find them pretty easily, but nowhere near the number that were made. So people had this idea, maybe they did find a way to get rid of them, and they are buried somewhere. So apparently this one guy, well, this team, is going to start digging holes in New Mexico, spending his time and money because he's got a hunch, and trying to find this stash of ET cartridges. I don't really understand the purpose behind this because it's a big desert. You're going to be extremely lucky if you find anything, let alone the legendary stash of ET cartridges. And B, this doesn't really do anything. So you prove that it exists. Big Froop and Whoop. I mean, I maybe I'm just out of it, but I don't see how anyone cares about that. If it exists, cool. It existed. If it doesn't, or if it's just a rumor that started out of nothingness, it was one of the earliest video game folk tales, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And why would you want to destroy that? There's no way to prove it isn't real because it's such a huge swath of land. You'll never be able to do anything to disprove the myth, but proving that it was real doesn't really do anything other than you getting to say, "I'm the guy that found the cartridges. Oh, why?" Congratulations, you'll get a medal. What? Like I said, maybe I'm just out of it. I just don't get spending so much time, effort, energy looking for something. Odds are you're not going to find. Odds are really good you're not going to find. Just make your documentary like you want it. Don't do something just to try and... I honestly believe that this is just him trying to drum up publicity. And I know that sounds kind of cynical, but that's me. But there just is no other logical reason as to why you would do something as weird and as stupid as try and find the rumored burial plot of the missing ET cartridges. Hey, it must be working. Got me talking about it. This has been Math Machine saying, I hate slow news days. Peace out.